You hear me?
No.
How about now?
No.
Let me turn this up a little bit. Can you hear me now?
Nothing.
I think there's something wrong with the mics.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on here? Say it softer.
Say it softer. Oh, yeah. I said that, right? Say it softer. No, say it again.
Can you hear me now?
No.
How about now? All right, there we go.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Bill Corcoran Jr., and I'm your host for the On the Stacks podcast. Today, I'm chatting with esophageal cancer survivor, Jeff Thomas. What's up, podcast episode 59 of the On the Stacks podcast in the Blue Door Studio. Welcome to the podcast, Jeff. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you, Bill. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's, oh shit, you know what? I forgot to the part I had to introduce you as a published author.
Right. So I think people should know that about me.
Yeah. I mean, that's why you're here, right?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, look, not everybody is a published author, but I am proud to announce that I have a word and a phrase both published on Urban Dictionary. So
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll leave it at that. But,
but the second part of why you're here, is your esophageal cancer story, and we'll get to that in a minute. But also, the timing of this just kind of worked out. For both of us. I had a guest that unfortunately wasn't able to make it today, and you were booked not to come in for like another month, and then the episode wouldn't come out for a whole other month. And you told me to keep you on call, on standby were your words. And I did. And I called you today and I said, hey, you know what? It's your moment to shine.
And here I am. Yeah, I appreciate the chance to talk about this. April is Esophageal Cancer Awareness Month. And I am a 9.9 year esophageal cancer survivor. And I would like, if you don't mind, Bill, to share some stats with your listeners about the nature of this cancer.
Absolutely. You want to share a little bit about your story and then maybe the stats?
Sure. Yeah. Let me take you back in time to 2011. I was a 50-year-old guy, successful business person. Well, successful is semi-successful business person. In northeastern Pennsylvania, had a beautiful house in the back mountain, a lovely wife, 2 kids, everything going great. And I remember distinctly having a 50-year birthday party at my house. We had a big tent, lots of people there. It was a great time. And a few months later, I went to the doctor and I said, Doc, I'm tired all the time. And he's like, well, you got to change your workout. I said, well, I don't know, Doc. I said, I really feel tired. And he said, well, try these vitamins. And so I went back and forth and I was fighting fatigue. Now, I should add that I was doing P90X. I was lifting and running at the YMCA all the time. And
so you were kind of fit.
Oh, I would like to think I was very fit and more fit than I am now, but we'll get to that. So anyway, I went back to him and I said, Doc, I have a yellow tongue. And he's like, well, you're probably using the wrong toothbrush or whatever, or toothpaste. And then I went back to him again and I said, Doc, it feels like food is getting stuck in my throat. And he said, well, we better get you scoped. And he set me up to get scoped. And by then I had been on the internet. I said, geez, Doc, I hope it's not esophageal cancer. And he said, yeah. He said, you don't want that. He said, if you got that, you got about 6 months. And so that resonated with me. And I went to get the scope. And I went to Riverside over in Kingston. Great doc, Dr. Andrews. And I went in and he looked at me and he said, well, I have an appointment for Monday and an appointment for a week from Monday. He said, which one do you want? I said, well, what do you think, Doc? He said, well, you don't have cancer. I said, okay, a week from Monday, right? Because I had other things to do. And so I waited till a week from Monday, the day before the scan, or the morning of the scan, excuse me. I'm laying in the gurney, texting my friends, we're going to go play golf. And they did the scope, the endoscopy, and then I woke up in a dimly lit room with a table next to me with a tissue container. So I knew there was a problem, and the nurse said, "Don't move. The doctor wants to talk to you, and he's going to bring in your next of kin." So they came in, and he said, "I don't know how to tell you this. but you have cancer of the esophagus. Now, when you watch the movies, Bill, everybody says, well, we got to get some tests. We got to run all these, this battery of things. We got to do all this stuff. And I said, are you sure? He said, yeah, I've seen enough of it to know. So, it was obviously very distressing. I went from having a really great kind of entitled life to being kind of kicked in the groin pretty quickly. And so I said, what do I do? And he said, well, you have to go get a CAT scan. So that day I went down to the imaging place in Kingston and I got the CAT scan done. And obviously I was very upset. My then wife was, trying to control my anger because I had a lot of anger. And then the next morning, my wife went to work, my kids went to school. At 10 o'clock or 10 after 9, I got a phone call from the doctor. He said, yeah, we got some bad news. He said, it's what we thought. It's cancer of the esophagus. And oh, by the way, looks like it's in your liver and your lung too. So obviously I went through some more emotion on the phone and eventually got to the point where I said to him, Doc, what do I do? And he said, some people in your situation don't do anything, but you need to you got to go see an oncologist. So I went down to Medical Oncology Associates, thankfully got in that day because my mother, who was a cancer survivor herself, helped. And partly because I was so concerned about finding out what was going on, I went in and saw Dr. Saidman. And he said, yeah, it looks like you have a cancer of the esophagus, but we're going to get a PET scan. So he sent me over for a PET scan, which is a different kind of tomography. And I had to wait another day. And as you can imagine, these nights were very stressful. I had to wait another day and he called me and he said, doesn't look like it's in your liver and your lungs. So you have a puncher's chance. And when they say a puncher's chance, they mean, you might be able to just get lucky here. So I said, what do I do? And he said, you have to find a good surgeon. And he recommended one in New York City, one in Pittsburgh, and one in Philadelphia. I immediately got on the phone and tried to get into Sloan Kettering in New York City, and they were booked for too long. UPMC in Pittsburgh, they were booked for too long. And then I got in touch with the guy at Fox Chase, Dr. Prashant Shah, and went to meet him. And he said, you got a terrible diagnosis here. He said, but I cure guys like you. So he gave me some hope. That was the 1 second that I got any hope from anybody. And so the protocol was that I was to have 5 chemotherapy treatments spaced 1 week apart, and then radiation 5 days a week for 5 weeks, or 7 weeks, excuse me. So 35 radiation treatments and 5 chemo treatments. After that, they did something called an endoscopic ultrasound to see if the cancer had broken through the esophageal wall, and it hadn't. Then they do a laparoscopic surgery to determine whether or not the cancer had spread to the organs. And they said that if they found one cancer cell in my organs, anywhere floating around in the water in between your organs, that I was not a surgical candidate. So I was very fortunate. They didn't find anything, and I was set up for surgery in September of 2011. So I had my surgery. It was a 16-hour surgery. The doctor took his time. He said I was healthy. He could stay in as long as I stayed stable. So that gave him more time to do what he needed to do in there. So 16-hour surgery is a long surgery, but I was healthy enough to have gone through it. Got done with that, and things seemed okay, but then I had every complication in the book. I developed a leak. I developed a thoracic infection, pneumonia, AFib, where my heartbeat would go up to 220 beats a minute. They'd come in and they'd stick me in the thigh with a cardizem injection, and it would come back down. And these things went on for quite some time. At the end of it all, I was down at Fox Chase 3 weeks then, and I had really started to come around a little bit. And the doctor came in and said, now we have to talk about your pathology. You had 7 out of 17 lymph nodes test positive for cancer. And I said, what do I do? And he said, the best thing I can offer you is chemotherapy, 6 months of something they call Folfox. He said, I don't know if it's going to help. He said, statistically, it doesn't have any more positive effect on your cancer than being married does. So that was horrifying to me. So I had the 6 months of chemotherapy. It was extremely difficult. Everybody who has cancer knows what I'm talking about. It's a terrible road, lots of pain, lots of angst, lots of suffering. And the average recurrence rate for somebody who was diagnosed at my stage, which is 3B, would have been 3.5 months. And for some reason, even though I expected the cancer to come back, it has not come back. And May 9th, I'll celebrate my 10-year anniversary of being cancer-free. So I'm certainly very happy for myself, but at the same time, I have a lot of, I wouldn't call it guilt, but I've got a lot of sympathy and empathy for the people that have had my kind of cancer and haven't been as fortunate. And there have been lots of them. And I don't want to name names, but there are lots of friends that I've met here locally that have been afflicted, that got diagnosed, that went through the treatment and didn't have such favorable results. And I certainly, I couldn't do a podcast like this without mentioning them and sending them and their families all the good wishes that I could. So there it is. That was my cancer story, and it started in May of 2011, and the treatment extended through August of 2012, and started rebuilding my life after that. And here I am. And I'll leave it to you to ask me another question, Bill.
So you talked about, you had some anger. Mm-hmm. Can you expand on that?
Sure. I think everybody who for lack of a better term, is a baby boomer. We were all taught to go out there, make a living, build a business, build that big house, do all that stuff, raise your kids, go to all the soccer games, all the sporting events, and treat your kids great, provide for them. That was the mandate back then. And so I was, in my mind, like 9/10 of the way through that mandate. And then cancer came calling, and I was furious. Everybody else, was, upset, and I was just angry. And I can't explain it to anybody, but anybody who has cancer will know what I'm talking about. There's just something that wells up inside you, and I would think that some people maybe don't feel it, but it was something that I felt, and it was the most prevalent emotion during my journey, and still bothers me. I mean, I still have anger issues. I'm still pissed off that it happened to me when I was 50, and it's sometimes in my life I feel like I was done a disservice, and then sometimes I feel like it's done me a favor, and I alternate between those two emotions, and so does every cancer survivor, I'm guessing. So
how has it done you a favor?
Well, there were a lot of things in my life that I didn't bother to change because it wasn't expedient. I thought, well, this is something I'll address later. But when you get sick and you realize that your time on earth could certainly be way shorter than you thought it was going to be, you start thinking that you should make these changes sooner. And I mean, no disrespect to my ex-wife. I ended up getting divorced and changing that side of my life so that both of us could go on and do what we felt was most important for us. And frankly, I think if I were to be very honest, I think cancer during that period of time made me kind of selfish. And I started thinking, you know what? 50 years I've been thinking about everybody else. It's time to think about Jeff. And that is difficult to admit, but I do believe that I felt that way. And I was a little bit resentful of everybody, my colleagues, anybody who didn't have cancer. I was pretty much resentful of everybody who wasn't sick. How about that? And resentful of my family and friends, and thought, well, they don't have it. This is not fair. This is just not fair. So that's what I struggled with.
How did you get through that?
Well, I That's a very good question. Looking back after 10 years, I'm not sure how I got through that. I did what everybody did. Okay. Let me give you an example. When I got diagnosed, everybody said, "Oh, you should be juicing," right? Now, I didn't smoke or drink for 19 years before I got cancer, and I was leading a pretty healthy life to begin with. But I thought, well, everybody's telling me I should be juicing. So I remember going to the Wegmans and buying a bunch of fruit and actually sell juicers at Wegmans. So I'm looking at the juicers and I'm thinking, are you kidding me? This is what it's come to. I'm going to be a goddamn juicer. Really? And that's what I ended up doing. So I bought a juicer, and I remember being on the verge of tears in the checkout line, and the lady seeing me with all these vegetables and me pushing the juicer up, and she said, "Oh, you're going to start juicing?" And I said, "Yeah, I have cancer." And she, I remember the sympathetic look to this day of how she looked at me, and that was one of the things that people do. Now, some of the other things that they do is join local support groups. So I looked at Medical Oncology Associates. They have a men's support group. I signed up there, started going to the meetings. Very helpful. Had a lot of cancer survivors, like-minded people that were all trying to do the same thing, to get through it, just like I was. I got involved. I've always been involved with the YMCA, but they got a grant to start the Live Strong at the YMCA program, which is a program, an exercise program for people who have cancer, where we measure them with by 6 different exercises to check range of motion, strength, and stamina. And then at the end of a 12-week program, you remeasure them again. So what it does is try and get cancer survivors some optimism with regard to their physical health. So this is where you were, this is where you are now. And so I got involved with that. We started the program here in wilkes-barre, me and Linda Riley, who was instrumental in the whole thing. And it's done very well. We've had nigh upon 200 people go through the program so far. So that tells you how prevalent cancer is here. And I also got involved at Candy's Place, which is another organization here that supports cancer survivors. And they have a He-Man Cancer Hater Support Group. That's the name of it, He-Man Cancer Hater Support Group. Got to be honest, I'm not crazy about the name, but that's the name. Anyway, same thing. A bunch of guys, like-minded guys, talking about cancer, how it affects them. And let me tell you this about all 3 groups. Every guy, you sit down and all the guys say, "Well, I'm just here to listen. I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to share." By the end of the meeting, everybody is sharing everything. And I've gotten more friendships and had more difficult conversations with these people than I've had with anybody, and productive conversations, real sharing of emotions. And you know what? For 50 years before I got cancer, I don't think I had conversations like that. So that goes back to that, the alternating of emotions. I do feel like I was given some sort of gift from cancer, and it's hard for me to say with a straight face, but it's given me a roadmap for the rest of my life, if that makes sense.
What does that roadmap look like?
Well, well, let me put it to you this way. I when you get healthier and when you get better, you start thinking, well, I'm back at work and everything's the same, and I'm having this interpersonal issue and this issue with my kids. And before you know it, you get mainstreamed right back to your pre-cancer mindset. And as a cancer survivor, you can't do that. You can't forget what put you where you are. And so periodically, when I feel myself getting drawn that way, I have to pull back and say, wait a minute, Jeff, after everything you've been through, everything your friends have been through, all these new friends that you've made, how can you possibly worry about these little items? And so that's that's the rest of my life. I'm going to do what I need to do, help who I can help, and try not to get caught up in minutia. And we all do it. And I hope to be here talking 10 years down the road saying that I'm still doing it. So
how about some of those facts and figures you mentioned early on?
Okay. I don't remember if I mentioned this on the podcast, but In 2010, well, let's go back first. In 1970, 3,000 people in the United States were diagnosed with esophageal cancer. In 2017, which is the most recent set of numbers that's available, 18,000 people have been diagnosed with esophageal cancer. So it's grown at 600% the rate of colon cancer. And by 2022, it's set to pass colon cancer off as a leading cancer killer among men in the United States. Now, it is, like I said, by far the fastest growing cancer. And it's worrisome. It's very worrisome. And I think, like all cancers, it's underfunded because it's what they call an orphan cancer, because only 18,000 people die of it. I don't think it gets the bandwidth that some cancers like breast cancer might get. Now, breast cancer is a horrible thing. I want to be clear on that. But right now, the 5-year survival rate for breast cancer is 90%. The 5-year survival rate for esophageal cancer, diagnosed at any stage, is 17.5%. So it's a very vicious cancer, and it's a cancer where the treatment is often worse than the potential outcome.
And why is the survival rate so low?
The survival rate is, this is a very good question, Bill, by the way. The survival rate is so low for the very reasons I told you about. I didn't go to the doctors until I had symptoms that were very profound. So, and frankly, I could have missed those, but I'm kind of a hypochondriac. So over 50% of the people that finally go to the doctors with symptoms from esophageal cancer are diagnosed at stage 4, which means that they're not a surgical candidate. They're not a surgical candidate, and the treatment can't be potentially curative. So if you're stage 4, basically the other end of the bookshelf is death. And thankfully, I was diagnosed just before that, but only just before that.
Yeah. So along those lines, and earlier on in the podcast, you talked about what sounded to me like you were advocating for your own health.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think it goes back to what I talked about. My doc is a great doc, but if you don't share with your doctor your symptoms honestly, I mean, completely honestly, they're going to do what the book tells them to do, and they're going to make diagnoses based on your personal history. And if you have a real problem and you really need to be clear to your doctor. And by the way, and this goes out to every guy out there, don't put this in your wife's hands. This is not your wife's problem. You need to take responsibility for your own health care. It is just not fair to do that. And I've met so many people in this esophageal cancer world that say, I let my wife take care of it. Specifically the websites, the esophageal cancer websites. There are so many wives on there saying, well, I'm here because of Harold. Harold has stage 3 esophageal cancer, but he doesn't want to talk about it. Well, you know what? Unless men start talking about it, we're not going to get anywhere. This is going to continue to be an orphan cancer. And I'm not saying that esophageal cancer deserves any more mind share than any other cancer. I'm just here to point out that it's a very significant cancer killer in the United States, and that there are ways that guys, or men specifically, can work through the process. And let's
how does one gentleman begin that process?
Well, the first thing it would be, and I would challenge the spouses and to say to their husbands, look, I know you want to throw this in my lap, but the fact of the matter is, this is your cancer, and as part of your journey, you need to step up. You need to talk to other men, other people who have been diagnosed with this cancer or any cancer, and you need to talk to them, get all their feedback, share stories, because this is not something that I'm prepared to talk about. The wives don't know about some of the things that you go through, and some of the things that you go through are just something you wouldn't want to share with your spouse, quite frankly. And I remember a time when I was on a feeding tube and I was on the chemo port, and I disconnected myself from the feeding tube, This was at the house, recovering post-surgery, and I was walking down our oak steps, nice house we built, and I remember tripping and just falling and laying at the bottom of the steps at the landing and just saying, this is what it's come to, and essentially falling apart. And but if you don't do it, where does all that emotion go? Do you know what I mean? It's what was inside me. Certainly I cried. I did a lot of crying. And I think men need to face up to this. And I don't think it's fair for you to let your spouse do your crying for you,
Yeah. So how did you kind of keep, we'll say, the hope this whole time, during your treatment and all that? What did you do?
All right. Well, this is where I'm going to deviate from the cancer survivorship book. I did not have hope. I was a terrible patient. I was, I wouldn't say that I was overtly negative, but I certainly wasn't positive. Everybody says you battle cancer. I did not battle cancer. I just showed up. They told me to be where I was supposed to be for the treatments, and I showed up. I was not happy about it. I was not excited about it. I was not hopeful about it. And the only thing that seemed to help that was time. The longer it went, where I didn't get a recurrence, I started feeling like maybe I had a chance. So at the 3-year scan, I felt good. At the 6-year scan, I felt a little better. And then 6 months scan, And so they went on for the first 2 years. I got scanned every 3 months. And then years 3 and 4, I only got scanned once a year. And I have not gotten scanned since. And the reason I don't get scanned is because if it comes back, the treatment's not curative. So, in my mind, the less said about it, the better, until such time as I need to do something about it. But if you look at the numbers, to be almost 10 years out, and listen, I know you told me to move my hands while I'm doing this podcast, but this is me knocking on wood.
Go ahead.
And I'm hopeful that I may be through this, and this may be the first time I ever said that. So,
really cool. Well, thanks for sharing that.
You bet.
Yeah, and you brought this smaller than we thought,
right,
esophagus with you today.
Can I elaborate on this?
Please elaborate, because I hope it's going to be seen in the photos, because it is smaller than.
When Bill was kind enough to invite me,
insert that's what she said joke here, right?
What do you mean?
The small organ.
Oh, I was saving that for a while, but go ahead.
Oh, shit, I ruined it. Go ahead.
That's all right. When Bill was kind enough to invite me, I immediately got on Amazon. I thought, well, maybe I can get a model of an esophagus, right? So naturally, I type in Amazon model of esophagus, and I looked at this thing. It's $43. $43, right? So I figured this got to be a pretty big, esophagus. They shipped it, and Bill called me today. They had a cancellation, and I thought, wow, let me check and see if my esophagus was going to be delivered. So I got on my Amazon app, and there it was. It was delivered this afternoon, so I ran home to get it. I'm expecting this big box, right?
Me too.
Yeah. It came in something that looks like a cigar box. This esophagus is very, very small. It's undersized. It's not even the size of a normal esophagus, and
subpar.
And I'm very upset about it. And I told Bill it's not the first time somebody's lied about the size of their organ, but anyway, that's my gift to Bill and his team here On the Stacks. And so I also brought something else.
Yeah,
I think you mentioned that.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. What's it called? Is it a gift?
It's a spinning prize wheel.
Spinning prize wheel.
Yeah.
So you brought the spinning prize wheel, but tell me the story behind the spinning prize wheel.
Do you really want me to tell you that story? Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, a friend of mine and I had decided that we were going to put our own podcast together. And so we got all the stuff, and I went out, ordered it all, got the 4 microphones, all the fancy stuff. So I made an office within my office look quite like a podcast room. And the guy that I was doing it with had all the computer expertise. And so the deal was we were going to get together on a Sunday night. We're going to have our first podcast. Well, we got it all ready. And my partner, who shall remain nameless, his name is Vito DeLuca. Anyway,
Shout out to Vito.
Shout out to Vito. He showed up with some bourbon and some cheese. And I was like, do we have any bread or anything? He's like, no, just bourbon and cheese. So we did, Bill, how long was it? Maybe
The video?
Yeah.
Oh my God. It was, I don't know, a few minutes.
It was a few minutes, and it was
maybe several minutes. It might have been several.
It's longer than I care to admit, but we did like a 4-minute video that was really a drunken sound check is really the only way I can describe it. Hopefully we can make it available for him, Bill, because I think
will.
it's...
yeah, so I'm somehow going to get this video from you, and I'll share it somehow on onthestacks.com. Where am I? So I'll find it. We'll figure it out.
Right. So as part of this little Shangri-La that we were building in our room, we decided we needed a spinning prize wheel, and you can't see it.
Give it a spin.
But I'll let you hear this, and I feel a little bit like Pat Sajak here. It's multicolored. Like the esophagus, it showed up a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be.
It's not much bigger than the esophagus.
Right,
so.
It isn't. And it's like we're ordering from Lilliputians over at Amazon, but it's kind of nice. And I don't know that I'll make a gift of it to Bill, but I'm giving him the esophagus because I can't see. I certainly can't use it myself, and I'm going to loan him the prize wheel until such time as I don't know.
Yeah. We haven't decided yet, but however, we might. Maybe we'll do some sort of like prize giveaway here on the Stacks.
Yeah, and I've also made some recommendations to Bill as far as his show is concerned.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell me what they were again.
Well, I think Bill, since your show appeals to an inherently younger group, I think you guys get into discussions that frame you in, say, the under 40 crowd and.
The millennial crowd.
The millennial crowd, right. And I think you should have a segment periodically that is entitled Ask a Boomer. And I would offer myself as the person for you to call. And someday when you guys are in a deep, really controversial issue and you want to know what the older folks think, you say, okay, let's ask a boomer. You call me, wire me in, I'll give you my opinion. I think as a 60-year-old man, with a lot of miles on me, I think I could be the guy to render a fair and honest response to your question. So
yeah, I kind of like the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Noodle it. You don't have to commit.
Yeah, I won't commit right now. I like to mull everything over.
Understood.
But yeah, I think it's an interesting idea.
I think.
It's kind of the only reason I brought you on the podcast was
the boomer thing.
Boomer thing.
Thank you very much.
Also, because when we got introduced via text, you also had sent me a wonderful selfie of yourself and a pitch to come on the podcast.
Oh yeah,
which I was highly impressed.
I'm in sales. Of course I did.
You sent, no, I'm not joking right now. Like Jeff sent me a selfie and a pitch.
Oh yeah. You guys can't see it, but I'm not a bad looking fella.
Yeah. Well, they'll see it in the photos. So go to onthestacks.com or on Facebook, On the Stacks Podcast, or on Instagram, On the Stacks Podcast. And they're going to see photos of handsome Jeff.
There it is. Well, I wouldn't call it that, but hey, let's see how it goes.
And the small esophagus.
Jeff with the small organ in his hand. Yeah. Oh my, I can't believe how that came out. But yeah, listen, do you have time for a humorous anecdote?
I love humorous anecdotes.
Right. Well, I'm not going to tell the story I told you before because it was too long. But
you were the Pit Panther.
I was a backup Pit Panther.
Oh, backup.
Pit Panther. I used to do.
Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, it's important. It's an important distinction. Yeah,
I almost drowned, but it was a great story.
Right. It's long. We'll get back to that if you ever ask me back.
We'll tell that story on your next appearance on the Stacks.
But I do want to share with one of the things that I did post-cancer was I decided, I got all these frequent flyer miles. I'm going to start going nuts. So I started taking my kids all over the world. And we went to Germany, Italy, went to Australia, New Zealand. So it was 2 years after my diagnosis. I was coming up on 2 years. And I said to my youngest, Owen, if I get a clean scan for the 2-year mark, we're going to do something nuts. He said, okay. So it's February, and I get online, and I get a clean scan, and I'm on Expedia or whatever, and I'm looking for decent flights that I can use miles or money or whatever. Anyway, Greece is $1,500 a ticket. South Africa is $2,000 a ticket. For fun, I typed in Moscow. It was $529 per person round trip from JFK to Moscow with an open leg to St. Petersburg, a 24-hour stop in Amsterdam for $529 per person round trip. Now it was in March, so obviously the weather was not going to be that good in Russia, and the pricing obviously was low because nobody goes to Russia and in the winter. And so my son and I go to JFK. We jump on the plane. We get we get to Moscow, and we had arranged for an English-speaking tour guide. And this tour guide meets us the first day and takes us immediately. We go to Red Square, right? And we see the Kremlin, and we walk around that whole area, which was magnificent and very cold, very, very cold, right? And I wasn't feeling that well. We go back to the hotel room, and we stayed in an American hotel that was maybe 5 subway stops from the downtown Moscow area. And we get there, and we're in a Sheraton or something. And in the European hotels, they have these big, wide open lobbies where the bar sits at one corner, but it's wide open to everybody. So my son Owen and I were out in the seating area, drinking beer and texting all our friends. Now, I should say before that, we went out to eat at a Russian steakhouse, and my son, who was 16, I said, look, if they serve you, you can drink. And as far as I'm concerned, we're never going to do this again. So they served them. We had a couple shots of vodka. We drank some beer, came back to the hotel, and now the night's wearing on, and Owen is staying pretty stable, but Dad's getting drunk, right? So I get up to pee, and I go to the restroom, and I'm in there for a while because of my advanced age. And my son comes in. He said, Dad, somebody stole my iPad. I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, they stole my iPad. I said, where are they? He said, they're out here. So we go outside, and they're throwing the iPad back and forth, right? And I'm like, what do you mean? So, and they're, in my mind, okay, there's 2 different sides to this story. They look like 35-year-old millhunks, right, to me. Owen says they were about 18. So there's a disparity in the story. So they're throwing the iPad back and forth. And now the conversation, they're speaking Russian, we're speaking American. We have no idea who's saying what. So now we're back in the bathroom, and they're throwing it in the bathroom, right? And I said, okay, Owen, next time they throw it, I want you to punch the guy that throws it, and I'll go after the guy that he throws it to. So we end up in this bar fight in the bathroom in Russia with my 16-year-old son. I end up grabbing this guy, and I got him in a headlock, pulled up against my chemo port. And I'm looking down at his head and my chemo port thinking, Jeff, you're 53 years old. This is probably not a good idea. So these are some of the things that I've done since I had cancer. In any case, there was some blood. I had to get some attention on my hand. I got cut. The police came, broke it up, took those guys away, asked us if we wanted to stay where we were staying. We said it was okay. And we got out of town a couple days later. But so those are some of the things that I've done. I flew to the Hofbrauhaus in Germany with my podcast friend Vito, and we got hammered over there. I went to Israel. That was magnificent. Anybody, by the way, can I say this, Bill?
Yeah, go ahead.
If you've got the time, I don't even care if you have the money. If you've got the time and you've got any interest at all in religion, go to Israel before you get diagnosed with something like I had, because it was a magnificent trip. 6 days, incredible. I went to the Sea of Galilee, the Dead Sea. I went to Mass at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It was amazing. The Dome of the Rock, all this stuff. And everybody said, oh, it's too far of a ride. Well, you know what? You're not here that long. I could sit in a plane for 12 hours to go see something I'll never see again. And that's another thing I would tell cancer survivors. If you got a couple bucks left, go do it. If you got a credit card with the balance, blow out the balance and go do this stuff, because it's important. And I think it helped with my relationship with my kids. And like I said, 2 years ago, which would have been after my 8-year anniversary, I took my kids to Bali, Indonesia, and we got tattoos. I have a tattoo on my side, a periwinkle ribbon, which is the sign for esophageal cancer. And it's covered in unsightly body hair, but it's there. So that goes back to what I told you about, all the things that I decided to do since I got sick. And travel was one of them. So don't wait,
Yeah. So I kind of think I kind of know the answer, but like, why did you decide to do these things?
Well, there just is, once you get a diagnosis like this, it's like somebody hits a stopwatch and you look at your time and say, how can I make best use of this time? Which is not to say that I make the best use of all my time. I just pick my shots, and these are some of my shots. What do I want to do? I want to straighten out my personal life. I want to straighten out my business life. Actually, forget the business life. I want to straighten out my personal life. I want to reinforce my relationship with my children and the people that I love. And then over and above that, I want to leave on good terms with the rest of the world. I want people to say, you know what? He was a crazy guy. And I think I'm headed in that direction. I just would like them to say it when I was 102.
Yeah. I love your sense of humor, by the way.
Oh, I've only seen the half of it.
That was a big factor having you on, because I feel like you and I kind of have the same type of personalities.
Yeah, I do enjoy a funny story, a good limerick, and I think it's all important. And really, at the end of the day, nobody can sit here and assert to the fact that we're all going to heaven or that we're all going anywhere for that matter. So why wouldn't you optimize the time that you have here? I'm not trying to undermine anybody's faith, but you've got 70 or 80 years here, 90 years here, whatever, and do what you can now. And then this way, I don't know that you'd know if you had any regrets, but you don't want to put yourself in a position where you'd have them, especially if you have the means. And I think a lot of people do that. I think a lot of cancer survivors die with a lot of money in the bank and leave their children and their grandchildren with unexperienced events. And I think that your children and grandchildren might find those to be more valuable over time. So use that money, use those resources to connect with your family, because you don't know how long you're going to be with them. And I struggled with that too. And then that was not easy for any of us as a family. So that's how I'd answer that question. I'm not even sure what you asked me, but
I'm not even sure either.
But it always goes back to that. It goes back to your family, and how do the people that I love feel about me, and what if I were to leave tomorrow? What would they say? And I don't know that there's any other better legacy. I don't want to sit here and say that I want my children to cry at my funeral, but they better be a little upset.
What do you think they would say?
Well, both of my kids have the same sense of humor I have, so I would say that they would have some sort of, snide comment about it, like, I can't believe he lived this long, or leave it to him to spend every dime, But I think that's their way of showing me love, and vice versa. So I can't say anything negative about them, and I love them dearly, of course. And what else do we have when it's all over? And getting back to these organizations that I mentioned, I mean, my call to action to everybody, every man that has cancer, don't put it on your wife. Take responsibility. Find the many organizations that can help you through this journey, and affiliate yourselves with them and see how you can help. And I think you'll feel better. I think your family will feel better. Friends will feel better, and everybody needs a mission. Make that your mission until there's another one. And does that make sense to you?
It does.
All right.
Do you think your kids are going to listen to this podcast?
Well, I would hope they would listen to it, and I would let me put the disclaimer in, because, like I said, Owen remembers the Russia thing a little differently. And Owen, to be clear, I said they were 35. You said they were 18. We're going to have to agree to disagree. But yeah, I do hope they listen. And they
What are
they
their
know I love
names?
them dearly.
Give them a little shout out.
Oh, yeah. This is my shout out to Austin J. Thomas, my oldest son. He's 29. He's a software developer in Philadelphia. And my younger son, Owen Thomas, he's 20. What's the date? He's 24.9. And he is a marketing guy in Westchester, Pennsylvania. And haven't seen them as much as I would have liked during the pandemic. I miss them dearly. And we get together for lunch or dinner every couple of months, but I'd love to see him come home. If you guys are listening, I would love to see you come home for your father's 10-year cancer anniversary, May 8th at Newberry Estates, where I'm trying to rent a pavilion. I would think that if you were to add up 10 years, if you spent a cup of coffee a day for 10 years, what does that add up to? $3 is about $1,000 a year. 10 grand a kid, throw in a miracle of compound interest. I want both of you to show up with 34 grand total. I don't care how you split it, but that's what I think I'm owed. I love you, children. And I don't care if you show up with nothing, but I don't know where I went with that.
I think it was a joke. Partially.
It was partially a joke. Yeah.
But half
of
true.
Course. Yeah. Maybe you better cut that. But I do love my children dearly. And, this has been a struggle for them too. I mean, my oldest mentioned that leaving for Australia when he knew I was going through that surgery was going to be difficult, and I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was very difficult for him.
Yeah. So before we end here, is there any message that you would like to leave our listeners?
When I think about the initial cancer diagnosis and the first few years of treatment, the one thing that always comes to mind is that I would have a bad day every day. Every single day, there would be a point in time. There would be a point in time where I just didn't feel like I could continue, and I would talk to somebody. It would be a friend. It would be a relative. It would be somebody, a nurse, a caregiver. And they would say something, and they would give me hope. And so my mantra was, somebody saved me every day. Somebody saved me that day, every day. Sometimes it was somebody different every day. But I would encourage your listeners to be that person for somebody else, and to not just give them the stock answers like, "Oh, you can fight this." Ask them something personal, or talk to them about what they're going through, because that's what's going to give them strength. Let them tell you what they're feeling, and stop with the stock answers and think about what you're going to say. And, the reality is not everybody beats it. And I think people need to be sensitive about that. But be the person that asks the thought-provoking question to the cancer survivor so that you get into a good conversation. And I think you'll find that will be more important to the person than some bullshit answer like the ones I used to get, and those weren't the ones that I would catalog as the ones that helped me, people that said, how does this affect your kids? You know what? I'm glad to tell you how it affects my kids. It's important to me to be able to talk about that kind of thing. But if you sit there and say, "Oh, you'll be fine. You're going to beat this." What is that? How much time did that take you to think of? And what did it really mean to me? So be that person that saves somebody else by asking a question that makes them think and makes them interact. And that, I think, is pretty helpful. The other thing that I want to mention, and I alluded to it early, is as you're going down this journey and you look at yourself and your life and where you stand in the universe and with your family, if you've got something nice to say, or you want to do something nice for your kids, and you have the means, don't put it on Facebook. Put it on a credit card. Take these people somewhere. Do something with them. It doesn't have to be a big trip. Get together with them. Spend time with them. Fellowship. And that's what is going to be important to them. And if you die with a few less bucks in the bank, if your kids loved you, they're going to love you with nothing. If they hated you, they're going to hate you with nothing. So do what you can with that money while you're here, and to foster a good relationship with your kids, because it's over way sooner than any of us would want it to be. And I know I'm probably pissing off some boomers by telling their parents to spend their inheritance, but that is my message to you.
Yeah, great message.
Thank you, Bill.
Absolutely. Thanks for
this has been a very cathartic experience for me, and I appreciate the opportunity to get to talk about it sometimes, and sometimes I talk too much, and you're aware of that now. But this has been a lot of fun. So.
It's all good. I had a blast. Plus, I get to keep the esophagus, maybe the wheel. Maybe we're going to have you back on. Maybe we're going to give away some prizes.
Right.
Who knows what the hell's going to happen?
All right. I want to go on record as saying that I'm going to, in a, I don't know if it's drunken benevolence, but it's benevolence. I'm going to make a gift of Bill, both the esophagus and the spinning prize wheel.
No way.
Yeah. And I don't do that lightly. This was a struggle for me, but during the course of this, it's been so important to me to be able to share my story and share it with Bill's viewers. Plus, he's a nice guy, and he's given me 4 beers so far. So what am I going to do, really?
Yeah, and you didn't even pay me for those. I'll send you the invoice, don't worry.
And I will ignore it like I ignore the rest of them. So it's no, this has been fun. And certainly you're welcome to both those items. And I wish you well with this podcast. By the way, can I give a shout out to you and your organization here?
Whatever you want to do.
I got to say this to anybody who's considering being on the On the Stacks podcast. Very professional, very, very professional. Felt like a movie star when I got here. We did some pictures.
Well, you are.
Beginning. Yeah, I feel a little bit like one. I feel like a young Natalie Wood. Anyway, we did some pictures at the beginning, and his podcast area is very nice, climate controlled. He's got sound stuff in here. I really feel like I'm somebody. Who was that movie on the waterfront? What's his name?
Shit, I don't know.
I could have been somebody. Man.
I'm a millennial. It's probably like a boomer thing.
Oh, it's definitely a boomer thing.
Yeah.
By the way, I want everybody to think about the Ask a Boomer podcast.
Yeah, so everyone start thinking of your questions, because it might become a thing.
Yeah, and really, everybody should know what the old guys think of things.
Yeah.
Or gals.
But yeah, I appreciate the kind words. And by the way, there's a lot of people I think that want to come on the podcast, but they're too afraid to ask.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I mentioned is, sure, you can come on here and pitch a business, and that's all well and good, but how about coming on and pitching a cause? Everybody's got a cause. Everybody has something that they feel strongly about. I can't imagine a better forum than a place like this for you to be able to tell people how you feel. And I think that would open up a whole group of additional guests for you. And I think you're going to do very well with this podcast as people realize how relevant and timely and local that it is. So I'm very impressed, and it's not to say that I didn't come here thinking I wouldn't be impressed, but I'm more impressed than I thought I would be. So,
well, thank you.
There it is.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, is there any way that our listeners can connect with you after hearing this podcast?
Yeah, if anybody would like, how about this? Yeah, I would like anybody who wants any information on any of the 3 cancer survivorship groups that I mentioned. You can do 2 things. You can text me, and only because I don't pick up my phone a lot. I'm a millennial in that respect. You text me your contact info to 570-262-9753, or you can email me at jthomas, that's JTHOMAS, at higher, HIGHER, info, INFO, group, GROUP.com. And I'll immediately respond with contact information for these 3 organizations. And if you want somebody to manage an introduction with somebody there, I'd be glad to do that as well. It's that important. And if you're a spouse of a husband, I'm going to ask you to make your husband call me, or make your husband text me, or make your husband email me. Let's take some responsibility here.
Excellent. All right. On the Stacks podcast in the Blue Door studio, Jeff Thomas, thanks for joining me.
You bet.
If you'd like to learn more about the On the Stacks podcast, be sure to search the hashtag On the Stacks on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. We'll catch you next time on the Stacks.